I mean, it was the best part of the show, but now the newness is worn off. Like 5 minutes later. That's an awkward acceptance speech. That's pretty funny. Well, see, like you were complaining about that quiz, like here, my homework assignment for 450, just make the chat server work. Go.
But like that's not a quiz though. Like that's not like
this is going to be way worse than a quiz.
That's not a time thing I have to like decipher and then put an answer to.
You only had 2 days to do this. If you didn't start the day before I assigned it, it's not going to get done.
Only 2 days. That's 2 days. I have 30 minutes. I have 30 minutes to not only translate this, but also then I would translating it. We put it in Chinese.
It's always a thing. All right, so we were just doing onto GitHub, right? Put the stuff we did up onto GitHub. Okay, so let's keep going today. Still messing with Unity. Is this the current state of our project? Okay, so that gets us going around. Although I did look into a little bit with our the cube. Let me actually just show that to you. I'll just dump this sphere here. Oh, actually, my cube's still there, isn't it? I'll just hide the sphere and I'll show the cube. And this guy's still drivable, I believe. Okay, so we have that issue, right? So I did some looking into it. It sounds like it is what we were speculating, that it's, you know, when you have the two surfaces colliding, that the way colliders work is there can be imperfections and with how they're rubbing. But what we can do here is we can put on a rigid body. So I'll just click on the cube here. We have a rigid body here. You have constraints. You can actually just freeze the rotation. So we could say, don't let this dude rotate on X, Y, or Z. And so you could actually feel the friction, because when I hit the button that puts velocity on it, and it's slowing down. I mean, I've been hitting the button once and it slows down. So maybe a massive 0. Didn't make a difference. Collision detection continuous is probably going to make it worse. It feels the same. I suppose you could just hit it harder. Although, I mean, I guess it sort of makes sense that it does slow down, because you're giving a velocity to it initially, and gravity is pushing down, so that does create drag. I would think a drag of 0 would not have the drag. You know, but when I hit the left arrow, we're putting velocity onto the side of it, kind of pushing it, and gravity still pushing down on it, creating a force between the in and the ground. So I'm thinking that's what's causing the slide. Drag and angular drag, maybe this is extra drag. I'm not sure. But in any case, that is a way around it. You can keep your guy from flipping around. But we'll go ahead and leave our sphere in there for now. It was a little bit more drivable. Okay. So now when we look at this, one thing we are maybe noticing is, you can kind of, drive the ball off the screen and stuff like that. It might be nice if we can have the camera kind of, if we think about a game, you got your player running through the game, the camera is always kind of hovering over his shoulder as he's going through there. So the camera sees whatever the player sees. So we might want to kind of link the player and the camera together. Now, one thing you can do is you can go in and you can set the camera up to, maybe be a rigid body with actually, yeah, you need to be a rigid body. So I'll go ahead and add a rigid body to this guy. So that's under physics. And then we're going to do this a better way. So for no good reason, my camera now has a rigid body. We're going to go ahead and say, you know what, I really like the height it's already at. So I'm just going to turn gravity off so the camera doesn't fall out of the sky. So we should see the camera doesn't have a change, in an obvious change to it right now. And then we're going to go ahead and say, well, if I want my camera to follow my sphere, why don't we just put the same box script on the camera? So we'll add a script. We'll put our box script on there. Now, what do we have our sphere set at for speed? We have a speed of 5. So we'll set the speed for the box script on that guy to 5. So now, while I'm driving the sphere, I'm also driving the camera. We do see that there is, they're traveling at maybe, it seems like a little bit different speed. That's maybe a mass or gravity thing, probably related to what we just saw with the cube. Actually, is this going to be fun? Are they going to both fall? Oh, no. Oh, because we don't have gravity on this guy. All right. Well, so that's one way you can do it, but you might say, okay, well, that maybe isn't going to be the most consistent because we're trying to, you're making your key presses operate on 2 different guys and hoping that they're kind of moving through the world at a similar way. And I mean, you might have a situation with colliders as we get into this where, maybe something smashes into the camera or something like that. And the camera goes flying off, spinning around, and you get motion sickness while you can't drive your sphere anymore. It's still driving, but you can't see it because the camera's spinning around out here. All sorts of stuff can go wrong there. So what we're going to do is we're going to come into the camera and we'll remove the rigid body from it. We'll remove the box script from it. So we'll just leave the camera alone. But what we're going to do is every one of these things that are in our scene, as we talked about initially, these guys are game objects. Okay. And we've even seen an empty game object. So game objects can hold collections of other game objects. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag the camera onto the sphere. So now the camera, its position, its if you notice here, our sphere was at what, 0, 5, -2, whatever. I'm not sure where we had the -2, but roughly in the center, but hovered a little bit so it drops down to the ground. So now our camera's position is 0, 0.8, and -3.5, but that's relative to its parent. Before, its parent used to be the scene. Now its parent is the sphere. So if the sphere moves, camera drags with them, because whatever the sphere's position is, the camera's position will be this offset from the sphere. All right, so pretty funky, right? We've already seen the solution to this. What's happening as I'm driving, our sphere is doing what? It's rolling, right? Camera's still following. Camera's doing what it's supposed to do. Our sphere is just rolling. So we probably want to lock rotation on our sphere. Or we probably could lock rotation on, actually we can't on the camera because the camera doesn't have a rigid body. That's okay. So we'll go to our sphere under rigid body. We can go to constraints and we will just freeze the rotation on the X, Y, and Z on our sphere. So now our sphere will still move around. Now, if you did have a texture on it, maybe a texture that looked like a basketball or something like that, then it wouldn't look like it's rolling. So you might have to go back and say, oh, I need to do this differently. But for right now, we can't visually see the white ball, the white sphere rolling. So we're just going to go ahead and say, you know what? The rigid body associated with the sphere can't roll. It can't rotate, which means the camera that it's dragging around also won't rotate. So now we can drive that guy around and the camera follows us. All right, make some sense? All right, so as we start moving forward and thinking about our game, we're going to want to have the sphere be able to drive into rooms, right? Because, you know, we're thinking about our mud and, you know, again, we're not going to be designing something awesome, but give you enough to then let your design juices start thinking about how do you make it better. But if we're thinking about this being this big map, I'm going to go ahead and change my phylor. Let's just rename that. That's our floor. Let's just make that guy way bigger. Maybe 100 by 100. So now if we center that and look straight down on our floor, we see our sphere is right there. So now we have a much bigger world that we can drive around on. Can't really see how we're moving, but we're moving. All right, we don't have any spec. We don't have any something to compare it to. So what we want to do is we want to build a room. Now, there's some things we can do. We're eventually going to go and look at building a room using a 3D modeler. Again, not getting deep into that. For those of you who have messed with Blender or Maya or something like that, you can do that kind of thing. My speed is more Tinkercad, which maybe you do you look at that in 175 for like you make something in Tinkercad and then you can do you can 3D print it. So anything you build in Tinkercad, you can then go and 3D print. It's actually how I do all my 3D printing inventing, but that has more to do with just my limited design skills. But you really can pull off a lot with Tinkercad. It's a pretty great tool, actually, as long as you're not making stuff for like, you know, like the next Toy Story or something like that, as long as you're keeping it relatively simple. But initially, we want to think about our, we want to solve our problems in terms of the things we already know how to do. So we're going to build a room out of our things that we have already done. So we're going to treat it like Legos. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to, because I want to house this thing as a, under this container that's going to be a room. And inside there, what I'm going to put is I'm going to put several, let's say, several cubes of various sizes and just kind of, you know, here's a cube here, here's the sidewalls, here's the roof, get them all relative to each other, put them all underneath a single container so I can move that whole room around. Okay, so I'm just going to create an empty object here and call this guy a room. Okay, and I'll go ahead and zoom in on that guy. So now we're going to start adding. So I'll right click on room here. And I'm going to add a 3D object. I want to add a cube. You might be able to just think if there's anything that would make our room easier to build. We'll just go with this. All right, so there's my cube. And the good news is we kind of want to make it relative to our sphere, because if we're going to make a room where we have some sidewalls and we have doors that are big enough for the sphere to roll through, it's got to be a big enough door. Otherwise, the sphere will be too fat. You can always shrink the sphere down to make them fit through the door. We ran into that years ago in a weird way related to what we're talking about here. World of Warcraft game. It was like a Christmas present to the other faction. And we took one of these outdoor dragons and we took like an hour and a half dragging him north on the continent to the main city of the other guy. We get him all the way there. He didn't fit through the door. So then we had to go redo it. We had to farm all the materials for this thing to shrink him. It was a shrink ray. So we got him there. We shrunk him down, got him inside. Then he unshrunk. And the best part about that is now he's stuck in town for a week because the servers reset every week. So any new player that was logging in that was in the main city would just instantly die because there's this huge dragon in town. There's a video of that out there with the Christmas music playing to it and everything. I'll post it. I'll find it and I'll post it up. The search would be like Viz Maior. That was the name of the guild. MAIOR. Christmas present to the horde or something like that. All right. So in any case, we want to play with Legos here. So I'm going to go ahead and make what I'm going to consider kind of like a wall. All right. So one thing you can do to make your life a little easier here, rather than just playing around with position and rotation and scale here, is up here in the upper left-hand corner, you have some different tools. So you have a position tool, which is called the move tool. You have a rotation tool. So if you click on that, now circles appear around that guy, so you can twist it to rotate. That actually is fairly handy if you're dealing with the camera. So if I'm dealing with the camera here and I want to rotate it more down or more up, or I want to put it higher, so maybe I want to switch its position to be a little higher, a little farther back, and then change its rotation to be looking more down on the sphere, something like that. That's a handy way of doing it rather than having to just randomly messing with the values on the other side. All right. And again, I know some of you have worked with Unity quite a bit and probably have better skills than me at the design stuff. I'm more of a programming person, so I do good enough at this stuff. But we're going to go ahead and kind of make what we think is a wall. The walls of our room, we think about this, they don't need to be that thick, right? But we want them to be kind of wide enough. So I'm almost thinking what we want to have is have on each side kind of two walls with the door going all the way to the roof. So we don't need to get too great at design here. So each side wall will basically be two vertical things with a slat in the middle, and then we'll just put a roof on top, something like that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I want to look straight down on the cube, so we make sure that we're looking on the y-axis, and I'm going to change its scale tool, this guy, and that's going to give us these little boxes we can grab and we can squeeze them down, and then we can make them wider. So we're going to say that's half the width of a room, something like that. I'm going to change my perspective now. So we probably want our walls to be taller. Yeah, something like that. Okay. And then, of course, we probably want our walls to be a different color, right? So you can go out and look at some point, we'll look at the asset store and stuff, but let's just make the color green for our walls. I like to keep things really high def. So you can't differentiate the pixels of well, I already have red walls. We're gonna do red wall. We're gonna do a red material. Well, in case you didn't remember, to make a material, you just come down here to your assets. You're gonna say create material. We're gonna call this guy, what I say, green. You can name it whatever you want, but I'm gonna call it green. And then over here, we're gonna change the color of this dude to green like that. Perfect. All right, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that guy and I'm going to drag it onto my wall there. So now I have a green wall. Perfect. Okay. So just for the sake of argument real quick, let's just see how that's my, does that feel like half a room? So if I was coming through, this would be like the door. I know I need to get him down to the ground here, but that would be the door. Seems reasonable enough. Okay. So we're going to call this guy a wall. And just so he'll drop to the floor, let's go ahead and add a rigid body to this guy. And we'll turn gravity on. Actually, he's probably going to like kind of bounce and bobble. I could knock the wall over. I backed into him. I had the parking spot first. All right. So maybe we want to go ahead and freeze rotation on our walls so they don't knock over so easily. Well, you could certainly do that. I guess that would be more realistic, where, you know, if you run at one of these walls hard enough, you could knock it over. But for our game, our intention isn't to have the ability to blow out walls. So we'll just make it so that our wall is incapable of falling over because its rotation is frozen. Okay. But this guy should now drop down to the ground, and I'll drive around him here. Okay, there's my wall. So that's like half of the entrance to a room. That's a pretty tall wall too. Let's see, it's my, yeah, he's above the ground right now. We could probably make that wall a bit shorter. Let's just get our initial wall height correct. That feels about right, or good enough, better. We can see the top. All right, so what we want to do is we want to create a couple more walls. So we're just going to duplicate our wall. So I did a Control-C on it, then a Control-V, or you can right click and say copy, and then right click and hit paste. So I'm making multiple walls. So I'm going to take this wall. So you should do that while the game's not running. Again, I keep doing that just to reinforce for you that that don't make changes while the game's running. Otherwise, those changes won't stick. All right, so I'll create another wall. And I always double click to kind of zero in that guy. And then I turn my perspective. And then what I'm going to do with this guy is I'm just going to scoot him over. All right, let's see if we gave a big enough door for our dude. Oh yeah. All right, so we got our door. I'm very easily entertained. So now let's get the rest of our walls going there. Now, right now we have the idea of our rooms have doors leading all the directions. We're going to have to start thinking about when we create our thing where, you know, there's only a door in this room heading to the south, and there's a door from the hallway heading to the north. how will we handle that programmatically? Okay. Maybe we create a door insert or something like that that allows us to so here I'll go ahead and create this. So I'm going to create a empty child in here, and we're going to call this guy we'll call this guy a full wall. I'll put my 2 sub walls in there. And I don't know, we'll call these guys panels. All right, so we have some panels. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another copy of this panel. And I'm going to call this guy my door. This is more for our future stuff that we might do here. And of course, my game's still running. all of that. All right. All of you are in charge of not letting me do that anymore. So there's we'll create a wall. There are other walls inside of this. Rename this panel. All right, then I'm going to create a copy of this guy. We're going to name him door. I'm going to move that door over here. We're going to make him a little skinnier. So I'll change my scale tool. Let's get him positioned right here. So if you want to kind of move it at the pixel length, you can until it looks right. All right, so right now that we could tell, boom. Keep me out of this room. But what we would probably do by default is have the door turned off. So we'll have that game object disabled. That's what that little checkbox is. And we will be able to programmatically control that once we start writing scripts for these guys. Okay. So I'll leave it off. Actually, let's put it back on for a minute and let's make our doors a different color. We'll make it a row. Oh, but my red is not actually red. No, well, that's kind of a perfect. All right. So there's that's what my door will look like for rooms that have doors. All right, but by default, I want to be able to go into this room. So I'm just going to disable that door. Actually, just for the moment, I'm going to leave it on so I can create my other sides, and then we'll turn the doors off. All right, so for my house, or for my room, I'm going to need 3 more walls, right? So I'm going to copy my walls here. And then what we're going to do is for this wall, I'm going to look from the top. I'm going to go ahead and rotate. So we're going to start rotating this guy, and we see where the rotation is changing here. So we'll just turn this to 90. And then we'll move him. Probably close enough. There might be a little overlap, but again, I like to keep it, you know, these are kind of log cabins built out in the middle of nowhere. They just need to be close enough. All right, so there's that wall. All right, then we'll go to this wall. We'll also rotate him 90. And we'll drag him over here. Go ahead and center. All right, so there's that wall. Get back to our room. And click this box here. This box I thought centered you. Okay, good enough. All right, so now we're gonna make, I'm gonna take one of these side walls, copy that guy, switch to rotation, and I want to rotate him this way. This is going to be 180. And then we'll position him ish. All right, there's a decent chance we're going to have some gaps in there or something. Get in there and mess around to get it exactly to the right thing based on the width and, you know, the math for that stuff. All right, so now if I expand all those rooms, and on the Mac you hit command to hold command, you can click on multiple game objects. It's probably shift on PC, I'm guessing. I just held the command button, I clicked on each door, so I can just turn all the doors off at once. All right, so now we have this. It's decent craftsmanship for being out in the woods with only an axe and sap to make those things connect. This first one here was pretty solid. Oh, yeah, we got this. Like, I didn't like it there. We're building a sunroom, and we're so what I'm going to do is for all of our panels, I'm going to freeze their position on X and Z. We still want gravity to push it down to the ground until I place it exactly where I want it. But now we can just drop it anywhere, just room. And we can actually populate in our game the rooms at all sorts of different heights. And then when you come into the game, you're sitting near your players there and the rooms are just dropping in all over the place. Oh, it's going to be awesome. Put spikes on a couple of them. Like, why is there a spike? That room is the spike room. Don't go into the wood chipper room either. That's the bad one. All right, so now I shouldn't be able to knock down walls anymore. Okay, and I actually can't decide. I'm thinking that a roof might not actually be beneficial. What we can do is we can go ahead and build a roof for it, but then we can turn it off by default. So maybe you have a room that you don't want them to be able to see. You know, some games you can like have lighting, and you know, if you can put a light out and you can see rooms around you, but that would make the roof disappear, something like that. So we'll go ahead and we'll create I'll just make a copy here. We're going to call this guy roof. Our roof will not need doors or anything like that. I guess we can leave the door in for a sunroom or like a skylight. All right, so there's our, oh, that's actually just a empty object, the top level there. So let me just create another cube. And we'll put him roughly here in the center. Let's go ahead and stretch him out. Okay, then we'll lift them up. We'll call this guy the ceiling. We'll throw a rigid body on him. With gravity, we're gonna definitely turn off rotation. There's no reason for that guy to rotate. And we'll turn off position on X and Z, but let him free fall Y. And now our room should just fall together. There we go. Except our, we do run into a little bit of problem when you get inside the, so the camera is a little bit too high. We really need to drop the camera down to kind of be surfing on his shoulder. So if you make it thinner, you mean? Oh, I see. But that would still be kind of like, it happens to let you see what you want to see. All right, so let me, and actually we left this guy pretty thick anyways. We don't need that thick of a roof. So we'll scale the height down on that guy. Okay, and we can squeeze them in a little bit. Let me switch to the Y. Let's go until I start seeing sidewalls. We'll scooch them over. Up. Perfect. Perfect. Oh, it doesn't look anywhere near perfect. This is what happens when I do things at the house. Oh, there's our issue. Let's see, the roof kind of hovers there a little bit. It hangs off because you want to make the water not get into the, you don't want the water to get into the walls. All right, so there's our roof. Now what we'll do is we'll just drop the camera down. So now I can hide my entire room there. We'll go to our, we're going to change this guy, his name to be called player. All right, and let's look at the camera related to the player. And what we're going to do is we're going to get him a whole lot closer. Something like that. All right, so now we're in that room. Yeah. We can kind of drive around. All right, so last thing, now that we have some rooms, we probably would actually want to maybe move those guys a little closer together, but I think it kind of looks cool. Let's assume I'm just like happy. This is what a room should look like. I can go ahead and I'm going to create a little folder here. There's something in Unity called a prefab. I'm just going to call the folder prefab. It doesn't matter, but effectively I've gone through all this time of developing a room. So I can take this room, I can drag it down here. And now I have the ability to, whenever I want, drop rooms into my world. So now I have 2 rooms in there that I can navigate around in. And you could attach scripts to prefabs. Yeah. I'm in the next room and all that stuff. All right, make some sense? All right, so for next class, build what you think is a room. If you want to do something just like this, that's fine. And go ahead and create our map of the department. Again, I would say go ahead and turn the doors on or off, but I don't think that's overly important. Just make rooms, and then we'll figure out how we're going to link through those rooms and that kind of stuff. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead. Get up desktop. This is the same project as I was using last time. I'll switch to, this is all still called Unity example. That's okay. So we'll call this guy room prefabs. I'll commit to main, and then I'll push to origin. So now this is up in the cloud, and I gave you the link last time, right? So my project's now updated with this stuff if you wanted to check it out. Questions, comments, concerns, bribes? Okie dokie. I'll see everybody on Friday.